And we're back for the third and final segment of DMZ America, the podcast. It's Thursday, September 21st, 2023. Why I felt I had to repeat that, I'm not sure, but
Well, the
I
date could
did.
have changed.
Yeah,
There could have
well,
been a glitch in the space-time continuum.
well, plus that first segment went pretty long.
That's true. Yeah, it depends. If you're like if you're like in Newfoundland, it's already tomorrow.
Yeah. Are they going to get hurt by? Did they get hit by that hurricane? Did you see that?
Hurricane Lee.
Yeah,
I
you
think
were up there.
I was up there, and I'm glad I wasn't there when this happened because for the simple reason I would have gotten stuck because you can't get to and from Newfoundland without taking ferries, and so the last thing you'd want is for the ferries to be canceled when you need to be somewhere else where your hotel reservation is. So
How are there no bridges? I mean, it's connected to, a country. It's a real country. It has a flag.
well, it's a big ass island, and on one side, coming from Nova Scotia, it's a 7 to 9 hour ferry ride. That one, I don't think you could do a bridge. I think it's 90 nautical miles as opposed to regular miles. I don't really know the difference. And then there's and then
Nautical miles are moist.
that makes sense. And going the other way, it's still a good hour and 45 minutes to get to Labrador. And that's still kind of a long way. I mean, I don't know how deep the ocean is there. I mean, obviously that bridge that goes down to the Florida Keys is very long, but
Yeah.
it's pretty shallow there. It must be. So I don't. Well, actually, that one just follows the keys, right? It
Yeah.
hops from one key to the
Yeah.
next. It's not really in the middle of the ocean, although it feels like it is at some points. It's a cool bridge. Yeah, I don't know. Probably first of all, I would think that even if you could do a bridge from Labrador to Newfoundland, which there should be because they're part of
Yeah.
the same political entity. They're part. They are the same province, so
Oh,
they should be connected that way. But it's so sparsely populated. They're probably like this bridge would hardly be used. It would be really expensive. Now the other one, I don't think you could really do a bridge. I mean, that's the big ocean that you're going across. I just
okay.
don't see it.
All
Yeah.
right. Well, that's not that. Okay. We covered that.
Right.
The big party switcheroo. Ted just published his syndicated column talking about how the parties are switching places yet again, maybe the most quantum change since the 1932 election. Ted, expand on that a little bit because I happen to agree with you that this is definitely the direction. A friend of ours, Patty Vasquez, Ted and I are part of Center Clip. She's on there as well, but she's also a talk show host up in Chicago on WCPT. Excuse me. And I talked to her about, especially when she gets going on abortion. And how, the government has no right to touch my body. The government has no right to interfere with my personal stuff. I'm going to make a libertarian of you yet, which really pissed her off. But that is kind of what that party is sounding like. I mean, I'm not wrong.
No, well, you're not wrong. So, but this column is something that I've been actually thinking about for quite some time, and it was precipitated specifically by the story that said that Donald Trump is going to be skipping next week's second GOP debate, which is not a surprise. He skipped the first one. It doesn't seem to have hurt him at all. He's definitely a pussy, but that's for sure. He should. I think for the sake of democracy, I think you shouldn't be even allowed on the ballot if you don't participate in debates. And I'm looking at you, Joe
I tend
Biden.
to agree. Yeah, I tend to agree.
But I think it should just be like in the Constitution. Like you should just have to. So he basically had he decided to instead give a speech to auto workers in Detroit, including some who are on strike with the UAW, which is currently involved in a pretty militant by the standards of these days walkout against the big three automakers. And he was going to speak. And so I just thought that was really interesting. And I remember just thinking, when's the last time that a Republican expressed any kind of solidarity with big labor? And that's not to say that Trump's on the side of the UAW leadership. He specifically called out Sean Fain, the president and said that he sucked basically and should endorse Trump. Obviously, everything's always about Trump, but it's still interesting that he's reaching out to labor. And I started thinking about how Trump also engaged in a very radical act in 2016 when he campaigned in the Republican primary, which is a place where bloodlust against brown people in the Middle East and elsewhere lives, against the Iraq War, which was started and maintained by Bush Cheney. And it was like, who would have ever imagined that a Republican could run against war, a Republican war, and win? And he did. And he has been, so I started to think about realignments. And basically, as you know, Scott, starting with Lincoln in 1860 until FDR in 1932, roughly speaking, the Republican Party was what we think of the Democratic Party is today. I mean, this is a gross simplification, but basically the Republicans were the liberal party. And the Democrats were a more conservative, staid, establishment party. To whatever extent there was any interest in civil rights, that was from the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln. The Democrats were the party that opposed Reconstruction, threw blacks under the bus in the Compromise of 1877, ended
sometimes literally.
And so things started to change in 1928 with the Al Smith, Herbert Hoover race. Things started to pivot, and FDR brought it completely home. And basically the parties kind of switched places, and the staid conservatism went over to, I mean, it took a while to really set, right? It's not like Alf Landon was a far right firebrand by any means, or nor was someone like Wilkie, but it took a while. I would say you didn't really arrive there for real until Goldwater in 64, but the die was cast in 32. The Democrats embraced the New Deal, and that brand of liberalism became what the Democratic Party was all about. But things started to change again, I would say, under Clinton. Clinton abandoned a lot of traditional liberalism. He became the first Democratic president not to propose a federal anti-poverty program, for example. His major accomplishments were all things that Republicans dreamed up, like NAFTA, GATT, welfare reform, the crime bill. And then Obama continued along the same lines, coming up with the Obamacare was basically originally invented as Hillary Care, which was originally invented as Romney Care, which was originally invented in the Brand Corporation, in the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah.
So there's basically, and so now, Donald Trump in 2016, he's elected president. The parties have switched places. Nowadays, the Republican Party is more skeptical of foreign entanglements than the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party is the war party fully. They are completely, in bed with the defense contractors in a way that we would have said was like worthy of Bush and Cheney, and now in 2001. And that realignment is complete. And then the question is, what happens on domestic policy? Well, culturally, you've already seen Trump reach out to working class voters, and things have switched, right? The Democrats, when I was a kid, my mom explained the parties as follows. The Democrats are the party of the common man. The Republicans are the party of big business. Things started to change, and now most Democratic voters live on the coasts, are college educated, tend to have higher incomes. Most Republican voters tend to be high school graduates, live in the middle of the country, and not be and have lower incomes. So that's a reversal, but that's only cultural. It's not policy. So to me, the next tile that needs to fit into place, the last tile, if for this realignment to be complete, would be for Trump or some other major Republican leader to basically steal the Democrats' thunder by coming up with some stuff that traditionally would have been considered liberal. For example, higher minimum wage. We saw, by the way, Marco Rubio recently proposed an increase in the child tax credit. However, he didn't quite go. He didn't really do what would be necessary for this realignment because he's calling for a work requirement, which is kind of like, that's not really what a
Yeah.
tax credit is for, but it's a move in that, it's a tentative move in that direction. If you had like a real, for example, true Republican throw money at the problem solution to healthcare or high college costs or poverty or welfare, then you'd be there. We're not there yet. Trump shows that he has the ability to spend like a classic New Deal, Great Society liberal. He did it during the pandemic. And so he just cut checks to every man, woman, child, cat, dog, aardvark. And so he could do it. It's in him. And don't forget, obviously, he was a Democrat back in the old days. So, I mean, we'll see what happens, but I feel like we could be seeing, I don't like to say like we will, but I'd say more likely than not, we will probably see some sort of realignment in the next X years. I mean, sooner rather than later. Let's just say that. I hate to be Weasley, but it's not going to be next week.
And I think too, it's not going to be like a wholesale. All of a sudden, the Republican Party is going to embrace, a guaranteed income. They're not going to, start regulating polluters. You're not going to see that. You're going to see an amalgam. But I think there's definitely a switch coming up, or it's already in place. It's already happening. I'm looking at, you talk about what Republican reached out. Don't forget, Ronald Reagan in 1980 shockingly got the endorsement of the Teamsters. First time they'd endorsed a Republican in forever. The movements that you enumerated here, Ted. I think you're right. I mean, the Republicans are the anti-war party. Really?
Strange, right? Who would have ever thought?
They're the ones who want to spend more money. The Democrats are now positioning themselves as the fiscally responsible party. The Republicans, though, they don't want. And this is why I don't think they're going to go, full frontal Democrat on us, because they don't want to lose the South. They're still going to cling to, you have a right to, subjugate brown people. You have a right to have really shitty maps like we have here in Alabama. We're going to gerrymander you.
It's cool. Go ahead, tase the band leader at the high school.
That's one of those stories that just both sides were acting like assholes, but the cops escalated it. Even they released the body cam video.
You should explain it for people who are unfamiliar with this proud moment in Yellowhammer history.
Here in the great state of Alabama, there was a football game, a high school football game. Don't forget, high school football in the South is a religion, so everyone shows up Friday night to watch it. The bands were performing at the game and afterwards, and the one band, I cannot remember what city. It doesn't really matter. You won't know it if I said it anyway.
The Fighting Tasers.
That would be terrifying. Anyway, he kept playing, and the people who were running the stadium said, "We want people out of here. We need to clear the area and
for what? Clear it for what?
Clean it up and turn off the lights." It's like,
can't wait. You can't wait like an hour, whatever.
No, well, this just kept going. They waited, but this just kept going. And this had been going on for, I think, 40 minutes, 30 minutes, and after the game. And so they said, "Can you make this the last song?" And the band director said, "Fuck you. I'm not going to make it the last song." And he didn't. He kept his band performing.
The music must go on.
And more aggravated the people in charge of the venue.
He fought for his right to party.
He did. He was a beastie boy. But the authorities at the stadium called the police officers. The police show up, and it's some yokel county cops. That's all you need to know. Come, and they escalated things. The band director was being a dick, and the cops were being, not to be out-dicked.
It's a ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna have a dick off.
It's a good old-fashioned dick off, Papa. Anyway, so the one thing led to the other. They said, the band director was being uncooperative. And so they were going to say, we're going to have to, there you go.
He was also being black, right?
He was black. The officers, I believe, were both white. And so they tried handcuffing him, and the band director is fighting him. And so
He was fighting for his right to party. I'm going to say that again.
All right.
You
Well,
gotta fight for your
boom,
right
boom, boom,
to
boom.
party.
Oh yeah. Okay. Anyway, so then that's when they tased him.
That's the 36th Amendment, by the way, the right to party.
They really should codify that. Well, they didn't have the balls to codify Roe v. Wade or
the ERA.
Yeah, or ERA. Well, that was the states. And
yeah.
By the way, the states that killed it were Oklahoma, no surprise, and Illinois. That's a huge surprise. That is a huge surprise. Anyway, so so that's the band director getting tased in the great state of Alabama. Yet another example. Put that right next to the dogs and the fire hoses. We could not be prouder.
God.
Yeah, it was. But that, when we talk about police officers, some segment, we're going to have to talk about how there's now a de-escalation training going on, which is what should happen. It should have been taught decades ago.
Well, yeah, anyway. No, for sure. And I think that's important. But I also think psychological profiling of hiring is really important too. I mean, you want to hire people who are calm by personality and hard to perturb. People who can't be riled up by some stupid insult or the perception that their authority is being questioned or whatever. People who kind of know how to roll with the punches and are easygoing and relaxed. They like the kind of person that a mean dog approaches, and the next thing you know, the mean dog is like just licking their palm and sitting down next to them. You know how there's certain people who are just easygoing and they exude that. That's who should be cops.
Well, and that's what happened here. So, but down here in the South, you're not going to see this warm and fuzzy Republican Party, but you could potentially see things like a guaranteed income. We're getting closer and closer to needing that as we have a more and more automated manufacturing base. I mean, we can bring manufacturing back, but that doesn't mean people are going to be working there. I've told you this story, Ted, and I may have mentioned it on the podcast before, but it bears repeating. I was on an airplane. I was sat next to a dude, and I asked him what his job was. We got to talking, and he sold heavy equipment to factories. And I asked him, what's changed over the last 10 years, do you think? What's the most striking change in your business? And he said, you pull up to a factory that is running at 100%, and there's one light on in the building. And it's in the office because they have the one or two dudes who are in charge of putting oil because it's all automated. And that's terrifying. But that's where we're going. I mean, and you can't, can you stop it? Can you,
as much as you'd want to.
Well, remember Mao when Nixon went to China and they had the people sweeping the snow away, versus America, which would have snow blowers, it's kind of, I mean, should you do that? You shouldn't, but I think Trump won in 2016 and still holds that population that Ted talked about, the blue collar guys in Toledo and in Dayton and in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and even down here into the South. He got them because he said, you know what, the Democrats have been lying to you for 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
They say they love you, but behind closed doors when they're sipping their Chardonnay, they fucking hate you.
Or they just don't even think about you or care about you.
No, they hate them. They hate them. I've had talks with people you and I know who lived in New York and on Long Island and we'd never go to Walmart. I go, really? Why not? Oh, the way they treat their people. I go, well, who do you know who works there? No one. I mean, they were in an economic position where they could go to, get the organically grown fair trade broccoli, they didn't recognize and really had genuine scorn for people who went to Walmart. And granted, there's some that are scorn worthy, but for the most part, you go to Walmart because that's what you can afford. You go to the Dollar General because that's what you can afford. Mm-hmm. And not everyone can, get their arugula fresh off the truck. It's it wasn't indifference, Ted. The what did you call them? Basket of deplorables. Hillary Clinton called those people. And I think that really encapsulates what a lot of people in flyover country feel that the coastal liberal elites feel about them. And for decades, they took them for granted. We're for the working man. We're for, and the fact of the matter is, since the Clintons, the Democratic Party hasn't been. It isn't. It's still a, rich person's party. It's, the party of Bono.
Yeah.
Or Bono. I never know how to say
Bono, I think it is. In fact, I know it is.
Okay. So, but you see, nothing like getting a 20-year-old reference screwed up. But that's what we do here at the DMZ America podcast. So where do you see, so now the dust settles, Ted. We are 2 election cycles into the future. Republican Party looks like what? If you had, broad strokes.
I think the Republican part, that's a big question. I think we'll have a party that feels kind of like the Democrat for foreign policy, kind of feels like the Democrats in like the 2000s under Bush, like sort of temperamentally, generically, not excited about war, not likely to start one up just for fun, the way Bush did with Iraq and Afghanistan, but willing to go along with one if the Democrats are to start one, and is sort of going forward open to the possibility, to the idea that they have to start doing things for working class people other than simply telling them that they have the right to own a gun or to beat up gay people. They're going to have to actually put some money into their pockets. They're going to have to, they're going to have to do something in terms of jobs retraining. It's not going to be FDR in 1932, but it'll, I think they're going to generically move in that direction as the Democrats abdicate that role, because Democrats started in the 90s going after those big corporate contributions, and now they're getting an outside share of them. And so Democrats can't be for the people because their corporate masters won't let them. So the Republicans, they can be for the people more and more, but it's just going to be a slow evolution. Now, obviously, that's assuming the existence of the 2-party system. No third party becomes important, blah, blah, blah. But, assuming that things are based on what we know now, that's what I would guess.
Okay. I'm thinking that a third party, a Green Party, could ascend for the progressives. The Democratic Party becomes the centrist party, effectively. Mamby-pamby, stroke a little on the left, stroke a little on the right. And the Republican Party will still be the right-wing party, but will also, as you said, let people own guns. They will fight against, there'll be anti-statism when it comes to things like, quotas going into colleges, racial preferences, against the woke stuff. And that plays very well into that crowd. And are they represented by that? Does Joe Sixpack, you're from Dayton, you tell me, Ted, does Joe Sixpack want the state to give him money? Does Joe Sixpack want?
Everybody likes money. So yeah.
Well, yes, but do they want the state to step in and hand them money?
Yeah, I think they do.
Okay.
That's it. Sorry.
Okay. It's just that
I'm
easy,
usually very long-winded. Yeah.
No. Okay. That's cool. Okay. Well, let's wrap things up then. As long as we're in brevity land. Where can I see things, all things Ted Rall?
You can go to Rall.com. You can go to Radio Sputnik. You can go to the radio show, The Final Countdown, co-hosted with Angie Wong, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern time. You can also stream it on Rumble after the fact. Go to whowhatwhy.org on Saturdays. Probably some other stuff, but I'm forgetting. Where can people find all things Scott?
You can go to gocomics.com/Scott Stantis to see my editorial cartoons. You can go to gocomics.com/Prickly City and see my political comic strip. You can go to chicagotribune.com/opinion and see a gallery of the work I do for them. And you can go to Centerclip, which is a place where Ted and I are involved, and some other friends of ours, where they're effectively mini podcasts, 30 seconds, no longer than 5 minutes. It's go to centerclip.com and check it out. I think you're going to find it really enjoyable. I love doing it. I know Ted does. Ted drops like 13 a day.
Love doing it.
So there you go, Ted. It was great talking to you. We'll talk again real soon, I suspect.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Tomorrow, in fact. All right. Talk to
for
you
those
later.
of us on DMZ America podcast, we bid you a fond farewell.